Oh, Megan, it is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. What a potpourri of hot topics today. We started, it's the anniversary of George Floyd's death, and the topic was about um, racial injustice, racial inequality. Have we made any strides? Where are we going? Two of your co-hosts gave very thoughtful answers about the history of racial injustice and how we got where we are. And when asked, are we getting anywhere? Are we making any strides? You decided to reply with your journey over the past year, because that's the only thing that makes sense to you is the things that you've directly experienced. And you talked about how this was a year of sort of being forced to be a year of being forced to reckon with racial inequality because we were mostly at home, and it was sort of put in front of our faces fairly directly. It was also the some of the biggest civic uprisings that we've seen in generations. So it wasn't just that you were stuck at home. It was that a lot of people mobilized to say, we're mad, we're done with this, let's do something to fix it. And if you'll remember, you were really mad about all that, all those protests. But you say, you did a lot of reading, and you spoke with a lot of people who know more about the topic than you do. And that's just typical Megan. You don't even phrase it as, I listened to people who know more than I do. You say, I was speaking with them. Or I was speaking to them, actually. I was speaking to, is what you said. Because listening is just not the thing that comes naturally for you. And what you mean by, speaking to people who know more than you, you talk to Sunny. I mean, we've had this conversation. You two have basically admitted that she walked you through what the racial protests were about this summer. Probably gave you some books to read, which is what you read, and you're really proud of the fact of saying, I used to be racist and now I'm less racist. And I fear that you think that you're done. It's a constant listening process. So, when people tell you they're hurting, you have to listen to understand why they're hurting, and not just tell them that they're not. So maybe this is the beginning of you learning that process. But I just have a feeling that if Sunny weren't there to shepherd you along, you'd still just be railing about in your white world. You said you went to brunch and you had to tell your racist friends that your Black co-hosts have a different experience in life than you do. Again, you can't relate it to anything in real life other than the confines of this show. And it also says, I guess those are the only two Black people you know. Well, no, Van Jones. Anyway, so topic number one made it about Meghan. Topic number two was about this guest professor at Columbia, or at a prep school in New York, who gave a lecture on sort of what porn means, right? And trying to express to high school kids, or whatever age they were in prep school, that online porn isn't a great representation of what sex is, and it shouldn't be viewed that way. You asked if you thought that was a good idea. You're like, nope. And then went on a whole explanation, basically saying why it should be a good idea. We all know you don't like talking about sex. You just admitted it on the program today. That your parents fucked up in your sex education by not allowing you to participate in the sex ed portion of your health class when you were 13 or 14, which is the right time to be learning stuff. And you did it later with your mom. She threw a science book at you, and that was pretty much it. So that doesn't sound great. Like, so maybe there's a reason that you're uncomfortable talking about it, because you don't really understand it, because it was never really properly introduced to you. And so that should be your number one flag to say, I don't want to repeat that cycle. Maybe we should do something different. But again, you can't extrapolate your own experience, apart from your own experience, to say, I should do something different than my parents did for me, because you don't have the ability to think for yourself that way. And then you go on a diatribe about the Duggars, and their lead son, as you called him, not their eldest, one of their lead sons, being arrested for child pornography. And it sounds pretty horrific. And your point being that, denying people access to, information, or, keeping people tightly wound in a closet, just leads to the fetishization of it, and eventually criminality. If you have proper sex education, and I think this guy's actually right. Tell kids this isn't really what it is. It's to help you get off, but it's not meant to be what sex is. So you were just confused about the whole thing. You said no, and then gave all sorts of arguments about why it's a good thing. Sunny went on her little explanation, basically saying this is why it's a good idea, and then you agreed with her in the end. So again, not great at discerning for yourself what you actually believe. Then what did we talk about? I know you did a lot of fangirl giggling with Joel McHale. You clearly want to get some of that. That was embarrassing, like just schoolgirl. It's so funny. I'll go anywhere for your birthday. Anywhere. I'll go anywhere. That was embarrassing. How did we end the topic? Oh, we were talking about survival skills. And if people think that they could last in the wilderness for 2 weeks on their own, and you said your dad taught you a bunch of stuff, like fishing with string and a hook. Well, if you've got string and a hook, that's fishing. The rest of it's just gear. Like it all just sort of fish. If you've got a hook and a string, yeah, that's the main thing. But it's so like part of your own standardization of, you come from a place of privilege. So you just assume that if you're tossed out in the wilderness, you'll have a string and a hook, but you won't. So you'll have to fashion those things and try to figure out how to make that work. Sharpen a stick and make a spear out of it to fish. That's a little more wildernessy. I don't know how you're gonna. Well, you sharpen it with other sticks and rocks and stuff. Yeah. So again, your point of reference is, well, I'm going to have some of these comforts that can help me survive, and then you throw your poor executive producer out to dry, that he would not be a good survivalist, which is just kind of mean. And Joy's hilarious. She doesn't want to be outside at all. Nature hates her, she says. But you know what? I'm willing to bet that she hates you more than nature hates her.